And now for the best movies of 2012. This list was actually really hard for me because I just didn't see that much this year that I liked enough to put in a top 10 list. Like the top 6 I'm really sure of, then after that it gets a little muddled, so the bottom 4 on this list is just kind of, you know, maybe. I liked it. But, I don't know, I just didn't see that many great movies this year. Maybe I missed them all, or there really weren't that many good ones. Anyway, let's dig in. Number 10, Rise of the Guardians. I am not a fan of 3D. It rarely adds to the experience of watching a movie, and more often than not takes away from it because it's so dark and the 3D is so crappy. But I accidentally bought tickets to a 3D version of this movie. And if I had to make that mistake, I'm glad it was for this movie. It knows how to use 3D, and it was gorgeous. The ice coming at you, the sand, the snowflakes, it was beautiful. Seriously, this movie is worth seeing on the big screen because it's visually stunning. And see it in 3D, if it's still in theaters. Aside from that, I love the film. I love that the film was set at Easter. I thought that was a nice change of pace because it's got Santa Claus in it and it's about Jack Frost and all that. It could have so easily set it at Christmas time, but they didn't. They set it at Easter. I give them credit for that. The story has some problems, but I really like the characters. And I love the visuals. Also, apparently there's a fandom for this movie. I would not have predicted that. Number 9, Les Mis. Well, I liked it. It seems to be getting mixed reviews, but I liked it. Mostly for the performances more than anything else, and specifically Anne Hathaway and Eddie Redmayne. What immediately struck me about it is how the camera will just linger on an actor's face during the more intense numbers. I think that is a true test of their abilities, and they all pulled it off, some better than others. Anne Hathaway was definitely the best, in my opinion. Just watching her sing I Dreamed a Dream was worth the price of admission. It just stays in close-up on her through that whole thing, and you just see all these emotions playing out on her face, and it's brilliant. The same thing with Eddie Redmayne in Empty Chairs at Empty Tables. I just really loved how it focuses on their performances rather than on big spectacle, the way a lot of musicals tend to do. Sacha Baron Cohen and Helena Bonham Carter were a lot of fun, and I normally don't care for either of them. But they really brightened up the whole movie. Hugh Jackman was pretty good. Russell Crowe was better than I thought he'd be. The rest of them were fine. The fact that they did the singing on the set really shows, because there's a couple of weak spots in their singing, but nothing that really hurts the film. And this isn't really a criticism of the movie, it's just a general thing I gotta put out there. I find it so awkward when characters sing their dialogue that's not actually part of a song. It's just weird. Either speak it or incorporate it into an actual song. Or cut it. But that's just a personal pet peeve. I really enjoyed the movie. Number 8. Django Unchained. This might be a little premature of me since I just saw the movie last night. It's still really fresh in my mind, but it was fun. I had a blast watching it. Well, it's Tarantino. I knew I was going to have fun. The ending was semi-predictable. I didn't figure out everything that was going to happen, but one thing I was pretty sure was going to happen did happen. But it was still hugely enjoyable. It was refreshing to see Christoph Waltz play a good guy for a change. This might be the first time I've ever seen him play a good guy. It was also nice to see Leonardo DiCaprio lighten up and play something fun. Jamie Foxx was fantastic as the lead. His character, obviously Django, is sort of very quiet, almost in the background, until the last half hour when he really pops into then the movie's just his and you're like, yeah! I loved all the random cameos in this. There was Don Johnson, Amber Tamblyn, Tom Wopat, John Jarrett. My jaw dropped when I saw John Jarrett. It's not Tarantino's best, but it's still really fun and engaging. I definitely recommend it. Number 7. Cabin in the Woods. This is why I love Joss Whedon. Okay, he didn't direct it, but he co-wrote it, and I think the inclusion of Amy Acker, however you say her last name, it kind of shows he was heavily involved, because he's the only one who cast her in crap. This took the cookie-cutter slasher film and twisted it around to make it unique and memorable. Like the checklist of cliches, the disgusting gas station, the partying college kids, the off-the-map cabin were all purposely done. It's not without its flaws, but it is one of the most original horror films I've seen this year. Actually, probably the most original I've seen this year, and it's not scary, but I don't think it was really meant to be. It's more concerned with being clever and funny, and in that it succeeded. Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins looked like they were having a lot of fun in their roles, and they were easily the best parts, even if they were technically the villains. I had some issues with the ending, but not enough to ruin the rest of the movie for me. It's fun. It's a good time. Number 6, Ted. This was far and away the best comedy of the year. I was afraid that Seth MacFarlane had completely lost his edge, considering that Family Guy sucks and The Cleveland Show always did suck. American Dad is still good, so, there's that. But in any case, Ted proves that he can still be funny, and actually throw in some heart while he's at it. I like Mark Wahlberg a lot when he does comedy, so I was happy to see him as the lead here. I like Mila Kunis a lot, so that was cool. Patrick Stewart as the narrator. Always loved Patrick Stewart in Seth MacFarlane projects. I always love it. It's everything that used to make Family Guy great. Ted is basically Peter Griffin, like down to the voice. I did have my doubts about whether or not MacFarlane could pull off a feature film, but I was totally wrong. He did a great job. Now if only Family Guy could get back on track. Number 5. Rhymes with Ted? Dread. I went to see this because I love Karl Urban. I wasn't sure I'd like the movie beyond him, but I was pleasantly surprised. The premise of being trapped in an enclosed space while being sort of hunted down is one that I really enjoy, and they made good use of the idea here. Where they're trapped is like this huge apartment complex, but it's more like its own community. It's like, I think they call them mega towers or mega blocks, something like that, and it's like an entire, city or city block in one huge tower. So it was very cool. They had a lot of different sets, I guess, to use for that. It's a very violent movie, and there's there's slow motion that highlights it, but it's not gimmicky because there's actually a reason for the slow motion in the film, so I didn't mind that they kept doing it. Karl Urban and Olivia Thirlby, I think is how you say her name, worked really well together, and I liked their dynamic. I loved that there was not even a hint of romance between them. I can't even tell you how refreshing that was. In fact, as much as I loved Karl Urban and think he did a great job, I think Thirlby's performance as Anderson was my favorite. Watching her, because she's a rookie, this is her first day, and basically Dread is just testing her to see if she can even make it. And watching her navigate through her first day in such extreme circumstances was interesting. She's also a psychic, so that adds to it. Lena Headey and Wood Harris as our main villains were really good as well. It took me forever to recognize Wood Harris too. I figured this movie would bomb, and it did, which sucks because it's really well done with some fantastic performances. Number 4, Sinister. Dear Lord, I've watched so many awful horror movies that came out this year. I've watched a couple that ranged from okay to good, and I've watched one that was excellent. When I first saw the trailer, I thought it was strange that Ethan Hawke was making a horror film, so I figured there must be something a little unique about it to draw him in. This is it's a dark film that's genuinely unsettling, in my opinion. It doesn't have the kind of confrontation type climax that I've gotten used to when it comes to horror films. It ends exactly the way it's set up to end. It's very quick, simple, and bleak. The lead character is not all that sympathetic, but Ethan Hawke plays him as so desperate and twitchy that you can't really help but feel for him a little bit. The footage that he watches, that he finds in his attic of all the families getting killed is really... it's really creepy. There's these strange sounds and horrific imagery that just... It was really, really disturbing. It also has its funny moments as well. Like I said, Ethan Hawke's character is kind of twitchy. That leads to a lot of funny lines and moments. There's also this deputy character played by James Ransone. You think he's going to be this bumbling idiot cop character, but as the film goes on, he's actually smarter than he first appears, and he's good at his job. I like that they subverted that. The state of American horror films today really makes me sad, but at least once a year, one good one manages to get made, and this year's was Sinister. Number 3, Argo. I feel I owe Ben Affleck an apology. I really didn't know he had this in him. The town didn't do anything for me. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't like it either. I thought it was pretty forgettable. But Argo, I'm convinced he's a good director. He really is. Since this is a historical film, you pretty much know the outcome, but he still manages to make it suspenseful. Like, I was on the edge of my seat for most of the movie. And it wasn't over the top. In fact, I thought it was kind of understated, the whole thing was. And once again, I really loved the cast. Like, on top of the good directing, Ben Affleck also delivers a really good performance. I liked how calm his character was and how he's kind of in a sad place in his life. I like that. John Goodman and Alan Arkin were the highlights for me. They provided a good release from an otherwise very tense atmosphere. This is definitely one I'll be buying. Number 2, Skyfall. Oh yeah. Only 2 movies this year captivated me enough to seek out their fandoms. Skyfall was one of them. I've never been a huge James Bond fan. I don't think I'd even seen the trailer for this one. I went to see it because I like Daniel Craig. And his other 2 Bond movies, they're okay for me. I have issues with Casino Royale. But anyway, this movie's fantastic. Fantastic. Strictly from a writing standpoint, there's a lot of problems, but it's so well made that it doesn't matter. This movie takes a personal look at James Bond. All of Daniel Craig's movies have so far. But what I like about this one is its personal look is not about his love life. Because most of the ones that dig more into him as a character have to do with his love life. This one doesn't. This is about his aging and his relevance in the world today. It also digs really deep into his relationship with M. And I think Daniel Craig's Bond and Judi Dench's M have a very interesting relationship that we've only seen glimpses of in his other 2 movies so far. And the entire movie's built around it this time around. The villain, Silva, is a wonderful mirror image to that. Like, he was Bond once upon a time, sort of. He was loyal to M too, he loved her too, but he felt betrayed by her and he let anger and revenge kind of consume him and take him over. Bond also deals with feelings of betrayal by her in this movie, but he's wise enough to understand why she did it and that it doesn't mean she doesn't trust him. It's a really lovely dynamic, and Silva's more personal motivation makes him a more memorable Bond villain for me. It's also gorgeously shot, particularly the stuff in Shanghai. The supporting cast are wonderful too, especially Naomi Harris. I really liked her in this. I could really just sit here and gush about this movie all day. But the directing is great, the acting is great, the cinematography is great. Even if you don't like Bond, I think you'll be able to enjoy Skyfall. Finally, number 1, The Avengers. There was very little chance I wasn't gonna like this movie. There was also very little chance it wasn't gonna be number 1 on my list. I have been anticipating this movie for years. Like, this was some brilliant marketing on Marvel's part. Give them credit. They really took their time building up this world and building up to this big Avengers movie, and it paid off for them. Like, I watched all the solo movies, and you know, when you when you know the Avengers movie's coming out, you, in the back of your mind, you're wondering how it's going to be, how they're going to interact with each other because they're so different. I was not disappointed. This movie just, I loved it. Joss Whedon, and as I said earlier, I'm a big fan, had a huge task in front of him. He had 6 Avengers to give screen time to, plus Loki and the 3 main members of S.H.I.E.L.D. And he did it! Making Loki a villain was a great idea, because not only does it give the story personal ties with Thor, but he's a powerful enough threat to warrant bringing them all together. Mark Ruffalo was an excellent choice to play Bruce Banner. His dynamic with Tony was one of the most inspired relationships in the film, and I was really excited when they first cast him, because I was like, Zodiac reunion! And nobody knew what I was talking about. If you like nothing else in this film, you have to like Hulk versus Loki. You have to. All in all, this is probably my favorite superhero movie of all time.